everyone, and without further ado, let's start with the Zaporizhzhia direction. Yesterday, the Ukrainian forces managed to advance 2 kilometers and 700 meters between Verbove and Novoprokopivka. It's evident that the Ukrainian forces are urgently moving towards operational spaces because time is pressing and results are needed. However, despite this, a large amount of equipment and reserves as before are not joining the attack in this direction. So far, all actions are carried out by small units, possibly because maneuverability and skills are required, as Russian forces can shell the liberated territory from all sides. The Russians describe the situation as follows.
On the Zaporizhzhia front, fierce clashes are taking place on the western outskirts of the village of Rabotino. Russian armed forces are attempting to cut off the flank of the Ukrainian group, while Ukrainian armed forces are seeking to expand their foothold for a southern advance. With artillery support, they have continued their attacks on Novoprokopivka and Verbove. Russian aerospace forces, VKS, have conducted strikes on Ukrainian positions in Novodanilivka. Ukrainian artillery has targeted Russian positions in Tokmak, Olychenkov, and Novopokrovka.
In general, as can be seen, the Ukrainian forces are making continuous progress toward their goal. Meanwhile, the Russians are clearly unable to cut off the flank, as in several attempts they have failed to advance even a meter. Therefore, the initiative in this direction is with the Ukrainian fighters. Moreover, there was a report yesterday that the Ukrainian forces managed to advance further in the Verbove area. We await further confirmation. Additionally, the General Staff officially confirmed yesterday's strike in the Melitopol region. It's reported that the occupants' headquarters was destroyed. But before we continue, I kindly ask you to share this video on social media and watch it through to the end. It greatly helps in promoting my channel. Thank you. In the Vuhledar direction, the situation remains stable. Ukrainian forces continue to actively destroy Russian forces with artillery strikes, and aviation is periodically involved. Meanwhile, the occupiers are only conducting shelling, and there are no reported offensive actions. In the Kherson direction, there are periodic reports that Russians are preparing for offensive actions, but this information is provided by Western analysts who might not fully understand the situation on the ground. In reality, Russians have no chance of returning to the right bank, let alone strengthening their positions there. Ukrainian forces have long moved to the left bank in the area of Dachas. They have managed to establish themselves there and are holding positions for further expansion, which will later serve as a starting point for an advance towards Armyansk. In the Bakhmut direction, the situation remains complex. Despite the liberation of Andriivka and Klushivka by the Ukrainian forces, the occupiers are attempting to retake these areas, and battles are ongoing. Unfortunately, Ukrainian forces haven't been able to completely cut off the Russians along the railway tracks to secure these villages and create new defensive lines. Many are surprised by the initial announcements of liberation, followed by renewed fighting in these areas. However, this is war, and the situation is dynamically evolving. The Russians have managed to deploy new reserves and are once again trying to regain their positions. The occupiers aim to move towards Slavyansk, while the Ukrainian forces are tasked with surrounding and liberating Bakhmut. Both sides are making every effort to achieve their objectives. That's why we monitor the situation on the front lines every day. So, despite the ongoing battles over the past day, the occupiers haven't made any significant progress, and the front line remains unchanged. In the Avdiivka direction, the Russians continue to shell the city, and no offensive actions have been reported. They couldn't in Sokolovdiivka. They have lost positions in the area of Opetne and are now only conducting shelling. In Mariinka, the battles persist. Russians suffer losses daily, but continue their attacks, and there have been no changes in the front line. In the Crimea and Siversk direction, shelling continues, but today there is information that the Russians plan to launch a large-scale offensive in the Luhansk direction at the end of the month, specifically on September 26th or 27th. Currently, it's unknown which section of the front they will choose, whether it will be Crimea, Svatove or Kupiansk. However, due to the deteriorating situation for the Russians in Bakhmut, they might cancel their upcoming offensive and redirect some of their armed reserves to Bakhmut to bolster their defense there. In the Svatove area, all attacks have ceased. Russians haven't achieved any success near Novoyegorivka, so there is minimal shelling. Additionally, there are reports of troop repositioning and the information of a strike group from a major breakthrough, as I mentioned earlier. Therefore, we can expect increased Russian activity in approximately a week. In the Kupiansk direction, there is also minimal activity. No attacks are reported, only occasional shelling. It appears that the entire Lugansk direction is currently in a state of anticipation. So, as everyone knows, today marks the start of the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will personally attend this session for the first time, having participated online in previous session, as reported by CNN. Key topics at the UN General Assembly will include the grain agreement and Russia's war against Ukraine. The publication notes that Ukraine will play a prominent role in the speeches of US President Joe Biden, who will counter those suggesting that Ukraine should give up some territories. Let me show you a portion of President Zelensky's speech.
Children, unfortunately, various terrorist groups abduct children to put pressure on their families and societies. But never before the mass kidnapping and deportation would become a part of the government policy. Not until now. We know the names of tens of thousands of children and have evidence on hundreds of thousands of others kidnapped by Russia in the occupied territories of Ukraine and later deported. The International Criminal Court issued arrest warrant for Putin for this crime. And we are trying to get children back home. But time goes by. What will happen with them? What will happen to them? Those children in Russia are taught to hate Ukraine, and all ties with their families are broken. And this is clearly a genocide. When hatred is weaponized against one nation, it never stops there. Each decade, Russia starts a new war. Parts of Moldova and Georgia remain occupied. Russia turned Syria into ruins. And if not Russia, the chemical weapons would have never been used there in Syria. Russia has almost swallowed Belarus. It is obviously threatening Kazakhstan and other Baltic states. And the goal of the present war against Ukraine is to turn our land, our people, our lives, our resources into a weapon against you, against the international rules-based order. Many seats in the General Assembly Hall may become empty if Russia succeeds with its treachery and aggression. Ladies and gentlemen, the aggressor scatters deaths and brings ruins even without nukes, but the outcomes are alike. We see towns, we see villages in Ukraine wiped out by Russian artillery.
And continuing the topic from yesterday's update, as stated by the Minister of Defense of the Republic of Azerbaijan, the local anti-terrorism operations conducted by the armed forces of Azerbaijan in the Karabakh economic region since September 19th have been successful. They have neutralized combat positions, military vehicles, artillery and anti-aircraft missile systems, radio-electronic warfare stations, and other military equipment belonging to Armenian armed forces. Meanwhile, in Yerevan, a crowd of dissatisfied citizens stormed the government building in response to the escalation of the conflict with Azerbaijan. As we can see, the situation is escalating. What will come of this, we will see in the near future. And that's all from me. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.